Yeah, obviously phenomenal game last week. Hats off to JMU. I haven't been in this league very long, but I would probably say probably goes down as one of the most exciting games to be played in this conference with what was on the line and two teams fighting. Really proud of our players for the way they continued to battle, continued to believe, and created an opportunity for us to go play for what every team in the country started their season off for, which was a championship. We've created that opportunity now. We got to prepare really well this week to get ready to face a challenging ULL football team down at their place.
Let's start off with Dan McDonald. Dan?
Morning, Coach.
Morning.
What does it say about it, and trying to amplify what you just touched on just for a minute? What does it say about your football team that you go down 17-0 on a hostile field, and it did not look like there was any panic or any real concern on your sidelines? It looked a lot like business as usual.
Yeah, it says we're probably not the fifth best team in the Sun Belt, which is where a lot of you guys had us picked. Which I
Well,
say
I
that
didn't have a vote.
I saw your vote there at your job. You had it on the work at the coffee station. You had it kind of underneath. No, I say that it says, I use that a lot with our guys that no one can rank or no one can evaluate what's inside your shoulder pads, and that's the heart that you show up with. That's the intensity and focus you practice with. And when you have that, it doesn't matter what the outside circumstances say. And I use that as the outside circumstances being the scoreboard. That's an external factor. In that game, we knew we hadn't played up to our level of potential. We went in at halftime. It wasn't a panic. We made the adjustments, and it actually came down to we just weren't doing our jobs. We were a little hesitant. Guys had their eyes in the right place, but they wouldn't pull the trigger. I didn't think we were as physical as we needed to be in the first half. And we just told the guys, just relax. You guys got us here by playing really, really tough, physical, and the discipline. And, ultimately, we went out and played with a lot more, confidence in what we were doing, a lot more trust in our teammates, a lot more energy, and we executed better. Momentum is a dangerous thing, and kind of once we got the ball rolling. But I will say that the mentality of whether we were in it, didn't believe, weren't going to make a play, never wavered from the time we stepped on the field. And that's what happens. If you can keep that belief and you can keep improving, and ultimately you got to execute. That's what it comes down to at some point. But if you can do that, special things can happen.
If I could ask one more, that game almost like a microcosm of your year. Where are you better right now than maybe you were at the start of the year as far as, different positions team wise?
Well, as coaches, we kind of know what we have. In this transfer portal world, you don't get to play. We don't get a preseason. So we don't get to play games in the preseason. And we practice. Every team practices, but there is a difference when the lights come on. And there's not a coach behind you telling you what to be ready for. There's not a coach telling you, hey, on the next play, you're going to run this and they're going to do this. So I think as the year goes on, the coaches and staffs who can better understand who their team is. Obviously there are games where we've run it more. There's games where we've thrown it more. There's games where we've pressured more. There's games where we played base more. I think once you kind of understand who your team is, in the back half of the year, you can kind of play to your identity, if that makes sense, right? You have a culture, which is what you believe in, how you practice, how hard you play, but your identity is what happens throughout the year. If you get injuries earlier in the year, your identity may change. If you're able to stay healthy throughout the season, your identity may change. I think, our quarterback is probably a really good example of that. He's gotten more and more comfortable as the year is going on. Which has allowed our identity to change a little bit as the season's going on.
Go to Matt. Matt?
Coach, good morning. I've got two questions for you. Number one, you guys are winners of your last six games, coming in, probably playing some of the hottest football in the country right now, but facing a really talented and really tough Louisiana team at home. What's kind of the mindset of keeping your guys, locked into the mission of continuing that success on the field against one of the toughest opponents you guys have played this year?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's no bad teams in championship games. That's just the reality of it. I mean, every team in a championship game is a good football team. That's why they're in the championship. The other thing is, if you're a coach and you have to motivate your guys to be ready to play in the championship game, then you probably haven't done your job all year. Our guys are fully aware this is, the best of the best. That means we got to have the best of the best week of preparation. What we've done in the past, obviously, you carry those reps and those experiences, but none of those points matter. We don't go out and play extremely well and extremely disciplined. Saturday, we're going to get beat. Where you play the game, in my opinion, does not really matter. Does it matter from a logistic standpoint and a travel and those type of things? Yes. As long as the field is 100 yards long and 53 in the third wide, we still got to go out and execute. I was on these calls a couple of weeks ago, and you guys reminded me that we couldn't win on the road. Now you're reminding me that we're 6-0 and we're the best team in the country. Like I tell the guys, it's criticism goes both ways, and you can't get caught up in either. You can't get caught up in the criticism when you're not doing well. You can't get caught up in the praise when you're doing well. Ultimately, we got to go out and execute really well against a really good football team. And because you're in a championship game, the heightened awareness that the other team is really good. I think ULL, has a better record than we do. So they've done a lot better job getting to this point on their side in their journey. So we've got to understand that. We've got to be able to make sure that our areas of deficiency we were cleaning up, because you get exposed in championship games when you have deficiencies. And then the areas of strength, we got to make sure we point them, because obviously ULL knows what we do well. So they're working on trying to negate that. From a coach's standpoint, there's no bad coaching staffs in championship games. It's going to be one hell of a chess match, between our coaches, our staff. What we can control is making sure we put our players in the best position to execute one play at a time.
We'll go over to Mike Barber. Mike?
Morning, Coach. Congratulations.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, I wanted to know, obviously we saw Mike Green, begin to develop and emerge last season, but this year he's just been so dominant. What's the behind the scenes story? How did Mike get to this point?
I really wish, I'm not, Coach Prime or, one of those coaches that just has a camera around the building all the time. But I really wish we could, because, you want to talk about a guy who's the most humble human being you'll ever meet. Walks in the building every day like he did the first day. You wouldn't be able to tell. I call him Mr. Big Neric, and he blushes because it's embarrassing to him, because he's like, Coach, I'm just trying to get better. And it's not one of these facade things. I joke with him all the time about, all the awards and all the things he's getting, but it hasn't changed him. He's been an unbelievable teammate. He's developed into an even more influential leader as the season goes on, right? When your best players are your best leaders, you got a pretty good culture. He's developed into a more influential leader. He's been able to handle, you guys think my DMs are flooded with, what school are you coaching at next week, coach, and all this stuff. What do you think Mike Green is as far as agents and, hey, will you sign with this agency? Hey, I'm this agent. Can you sign with me? It's unbelievable the way he's handled it. I told him probably during the bye week or 2 weeks after the bye week, we went and played Southern Miss. And he had 3 sacks in the first half or whatever it was. And at halftime, we said, hey, look, you're done. We're going to play some of the younger guys. And typically, a guy that's counting stats or a guy that's trying to, set a record. It's like, oh, look, let me get one more. Let me get one more. He said, okay, I'll coach up the young guys. And I brought him in after that game. I said, I've coached a lot of really good players. There's only been one other player that I've coached in my entire career who had the same humbleness and care for others as Mike does, and that was Saquon Barkley. And I told him that. I said, and because of that, you are going to get a lot of positive things in your life, and everything that you actually work for and want will come to you because you are humble. You are a really good teammate. You do care about the guys next to you. And it's sad because I know the fans and I know people, appreciate him. But if you really got to spend time with him and interact with him every day, he's a generational talent, not just on the field, but as a human. You don't get that much. Talking about a guy that could have went and left for NIL. We don't have any here. You know what I mean? So trust me, he ain't getting paid to stay here. A guy that, has gone out and could have very easily been at X, Y, and Z Power 5 school and chose to stay. A guy that really could come in the office and say, hey, look, coach, if I don't get X, Y, and Z, I'm not playing this week. I'm redshirting. All of the things that we read about and hear about across the country, from different players. That's not Mike Green. He is a generational talent and a generational human.
How did you get him? Obviously, he transferred from UVA. Was there a connection before, or what was the link there?
Yeah, because I'm the best recruiter in the country.
Perfect.
No, I joke, but sometimes you got relationships and you treat people the right way, and you have a track record of treating people the right way, not how many wins you have or not, how many championships you have, which all that matters. But when you have a track record of treating people the right way, some connections from the Virginia area where I've spent a lot of time, reached out when he got into his situation, said, hey, here we got a young man that's, caught up in a situation that's not true. Will you give him a second chance? And, he needs to be around you, coach, because I know you're going to help mold him, off the field as well as on the field. I know you're going to be honest with him. I know you're going to coach him hard. You're not going to treat him any differently than a walk-on. And this is what he needs right now. And got a chance to meet with his family, and everything they said that he would be, he was. And I would assume everything that I told them that I would do for him while he was here, I've done.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go over to Joe.
Hey, Coach. Regarding Braylon Braxton, where have you seen the most development from him over the course of this year since he joined you in the offseason?
Yeah, I think he's doing a really good job of taking care of the ball, and that's a huge piece of playing quarterback. And, when we say taking care of the ball, we're not just talking throwing interceptions or fumbling. We're talking, deciding not to throw it in the double coverage, knowing when to pull it down and take off, making sure everyone's set so we don't have a procedure penalty, making sure the motions time up the right way, so we don't have, a ill-timed snap or whatever it is. And when you do that, you can do what he's done really the last 6 weeks is play really efficient. He's been able to pull the ball down and take off and get some, first downs with his legs, which keeps defenses off balance. He's been able to make some, critical throws, at critical times. Obviously, he still would like to have 3 or 4 throws back every game, but he's been really efficient and he's taking care of the ball. And I think that's a huge step for a quarterback. There's a lot of things the quarterback gets criticized for, but I don't think a lot of times quarterbacks get credit for how efficient they are and how well they take care of the ball. Not only turnovers, but all the other things.
And then big drop in penalties called on you guys this season. I think you're the least penalized team in the Sun Belt at the moment. Was that something that was specifically emphasized over the course of the year and in the offseason, or did that come about organically?
Yeah, so I met with John McDade. John is the head of officials. I brought ice cream, balloons, and a nice little cake. And I said, hey, man, if you don't call any penalties on us, you'll have plenty of ice cream. You'll have plenty of cake. No. We went back last year and we looked at, what are our issues? Turnovers and penalties. And, when you turn the ball over, obviously you minimize the opportunities. When you get in penalties, you make it really difficult to stay on track or be efficient. You start getting in the 1st and 20, you start getting in the 3rd and long. And those things are hard to, overcome versus really good teams. So we just made it a really big point of emphasis of obviously fundamental discipline. I think, a lot of penalties happen, after the ball snapped. That's a little bit of fundamental, keeping your hands inside, running your feet, having your hat in good leverage. So we really focused on that. Some of them happen pre-snap, jumping off sides, not being on the line of scrimmage, double guys in motion. That goes back to where I said the quarterback's taking care of the ball, making sure we got the right formation, making sure we are, going in motion at the right time. So just an intentional focus on the things that made us inefficient last year, and trying to be more cognizant of, okay, how can we control what we can control? We have a really good opportunity to control penalties. We have a really good opportunity to control turnovers. So let's focus on those things. We can't control what the defense calls or if they blitz or play coverage, but really focus on the things we can control, and it's worked out in our favor so far.
Thank you.
We'll go over to Marcus. Marcus?
Hey, Coach, back when you guys played against Louisiana in 2021, you had a quote where I think they asked you, how good is the team? And you said they're good, they're really, really good, they're good, they're good. Like, as you've looked at this team over the years from a distance, how have you seen them, take their lumps in back-to-back 6 and 7 seasons and now get to this point where, like you said, they're playing with a better record than you guys coming into this game?
Yeah, they're still really good. And I don't think they've ever taken a step back. I think they've had a couple of seasons where injuries have, kind of limited some of the things that they've been able to do. You can tell there's a culture there. Back when we played them in 21, they were big, they were physical. They had playmakers at the skill position. They came here in 22, kicked our tails because they were big and physical, and had playmakers at the skill position. And when you turn the film on now, they're big, they're physical, and they got playmakers at the skill position. You can tell there's been a philosophy in recruiting there, the types of bodies that they've recruited over the last 3 years that we've seen them. You can tell that there is a philosophy and a culture of toughness. They beat people up. I mean, that's one thing that they do. When you watch the games, they just wear you down. You can tell from a coaching perspective that they're well coached. It's not a lot of, we play these teams and it's like high school Harry. It's a muddle in the middle of the field. It's a throwback. They ain't doing none of that crap. It's real football. Line it up and run the ball at you, and then throw the ball behind you. That's what they do. That's real football. They don't need the tricks and the gimmicks and let me line up in this fancy formation and, and look to the sideline and snap the ball. This is real blackjack versus thunder. They line up and they kick people's tail. And that's a lot of credit to Coach D and the staff. That's a lot of credit to the players. They're very consistent in what they do. You can tell they have a system. The systems make sense on both sides of the ball. You don't see their guys out of position very often. They don't make a lot of mistakes. I'm not sure what their, penalty and turnover ratio is, but I can bet it's probably low, just because championship teams typically are low in those areas. So it's going to be a true championship football game that they have not gotten to where they are this year or the years past by circumstance or, the scenario game. If, these 3 teams lose and this team over here quits and this team over here loses 7 guys, the ineligibility, then we're in the championship. No, they've gone about it the hard way. They've earned everything they've gotten. It's going to be a challenge for us.
We'll go over to Matt.
Coach, you joked earlier about your DMs getting blown up about where you're going to be coaching next week. What would be your comment regarding the reports and the rumors about your future?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have kids?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, well, you're going to have a kid, and any 9-year-old can create a Twitter handle and post anything. And if you tag sources in front of it, everyone thinks that you actually know what you're talking about. So the beauty of social media is that any and everybody can post something. And, if enough people retweet it or like it, all of a sudden it's true. Jobs. I don't have any jobs on the horizon. Obviously with what we are looking at as far as an opportunity, that's where my focus has been. I know that sounds very coach cliche, but that's the reality of it. We got back at 6 a.m. and I got into bed at 6:40, and at 8:20 a.m. my 2-year-old was jumping on my forehead. So I really didn't have time to accept any jobs in between that. We came back in, and Travis let us know that we lost the computer poll to get the game home by 1,000,000 points. And, we suck and we have to play at, Lafayette, no chance to play in Huntington. I had to let the team know. So I say all that to say I really haven't had an opportunity to accept any other jobs. Now, as always, I say when there is noise, I think that's a good thing. There is nobody calling the coaches of the 0-10 teams. There's nobody calling the coaches of the teams that are not in bowl games. There's no one calling the coaches of the teams that aren't having good seasons. So like I told the team yesterday, I addressed it with the team. With team success comes individual recognition. And that plays so for the coaches. I told them, I'm sure there are D1 schools hitting our guys up about going in the portal. It just doesn't go on Twitter because it's New York yesterday, noon. Whatever that plane was, it went wherever we'd like to use it, so we didn't have to bus back to Harrisonburg 6.5 hours in the snow. We'd love to use that plane and track it. But no, I get it. It's the profession that we live in. I thank the players for even having me in the position to have interest, for having the other coaches in the position to have interest. I do think, it becomes a little bit of a sticking point because of the timing, right? There's signing day on Wednesday. So these schools that do have openings have to try and do something quick. Well, us schools that have championship football teams, we got something to do quick too. That's prepare for this game. So that's where our focus is. I did address it with the team yesterday because obviously they read the Twitters and the boards and all of that. But I can say to you honestly and look you in the screen that I haven't taken any jobs. I haven't committed to any jobs right now. And I'm trying to figure out how in the hell are we going to stop the stretch versus ULL? That's where my main focus is.
We'll go over to Mike Barber. Mike.
Well, we'll stick on that for one. Will you be back with Marshall next season?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, there is contract talks that need to be had. I will say this, I've never been a coach that likes to have those discussions during the year, because I do think it takes away from focus when you start having contract discussions, because it's not will you go to the prom with me, circle yes or no, right? Contract discussions are what does it look like long term for each party? Contract discussions are what does it look like for your staff? What does it look like conference-wide, right? So those things take research and time. So I've never liked to get into those conversations during the season because, again, if I'm researching how much money ULL is spending in recruiting and how much money other schools are spending in operation budget, I'm not getting my guys ready to play. Because of that, obviously those conversations have to be delayed. Because we're playing good, that delay is even longer. But I do, the administration here and myself have had conversations about, we understand, this is going longer than typical. We understand there is going to have to come a time we have this discussion, but right now we all, myself, Brad, Christian, the board, everybody involved thinks it's best we focus on this game. It's not going to change whether we put something on paper today or, 2 days after the game or whenever that is. Right now, they said it to me, Coach Huff, you need to be focused on this game, and which I agree with. So to answer your question, we haven't gotten there yet because we're playing so well.
Well, then let me ask you one more about this game. Coach D was on before, and he mentioned the fact that you move Mike Green around formation so much, it makes it difficult to, plan for how you want to approach him. How disruptive has he been, not just from the 16 sacks, but from other teams trying to account for him? And what does that do for the rest of your defense?
Yeah, well, let Coach D know I'm probably going to suspend Mike for not eating all his meals, and probably I'll move a team meeting up and make him late to a team meeting. So I'm going to suspend him because I don't think he needs to play. I think it's actually, probably best that I steal one of his cleats or something so he can't play. So Coach D, you don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, Coach D, you don't have to worry about anything with Mike Green. No, obviously what it does is now people are spending time in protection trying to double and chip and have a plan for Mike Green, which, as I always say, we know who Scottie Pippen, we know who Tony Kukoc, we know who Dennis Rodman and those guys are because of Michael Jordan. We know who Draymond Green, we know who Klay Thompson is because of Steph Curry. And I've said it to the team, because everyone is putting so much attention on Mike Green, this is an opportunity for the other guys to step up and make some plays. I think Taquez Legs has stepped up and made some plays. I think D.V. Harris has stepped up and made some plays on the other end. Jabari Ishmael has stepped up and made some plays. So there's been other opportunities for other guys to step up and make plays because there is so much attention on how do we block, double, slide to Mike Green. And then I think the coaches are doing a good job of moving him around so that it's not always, hey, he lines up only on the right side. We know he's going to be on the right side, which again creates another level of difficulty for an offense to kind of find out, okay, where is he? How can we run this play and have protection against him? How can we put, an extra tight end or an extra back chipping on that side? Okay, if we do that, how does that affect the route combination? If we do that, how does that affect how many guys we can get out? If we do that, does that expose another one of our guys to a one-on-one that we may not want to do? So I think it creates a lot of, havoc because of, from the chess match of, okay, we got to know where he's at. We got to account for him. But that also has an effect on what teams are trying to do holistically.
Thank you.
Time for one more. We'll go with Dan Powell. Dan?
Yeah, thanks for one more, Coach. Just want to ask you kind of a philosophical question. Coach Des talked about having to re-recruit players every year. You talked about what a great young man Mike Green was for not, having to listen to all the outside noise and so forth. You've been around athletics for a long time. Are you concerned about where we're headed in college football and college athletics in general?
No, I'm concerned that there's going to have to be change, and I don't know if there's enough coaches who are willing to do that. We've been accustomed to doing things the same way for so long. We're going to have to change. We're going to have to adapt. Fans, we're going to have to adapt. Universities are going to have to adapt. Administrations are going to have to adapt. This change is what the new college landscape is going to be. I think this game is always going to be purity. It's going to be pure at the core. This game is always going to teach young men life. There's going to be men in this game who ultimately help mentor these young men. Those men are just going to have to adapt their approach. And you're not going to be able to do it the way you did it 20 years ago. You're not going to be able to do it the way Coach Saban did it, for me. There's things that'll carry over, but I can't carbon copy what he did and think it's going to work. You got to adapt. The kids have adapted. Obviously, I think there's still some rules and parameters that will be put in place to kind of help modify some of these things. But the game isn't, the ketchup's not going back in the bottle. So we're not going back. So we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to adapt the way we recruit. We're going to have to adapt the way coaches invest in their team. We're going to have to adapt the way coaches even, their culture is going to have to adapt, because there's going to be situations where you have a phenomenal kid who has a phenomenal year and he's going to get opportunities somewhere else. And you can't be upset and bitter and this sucks. It's part of the new landscape. So you got to have a really good understanding of who those kids are. You got to have a really good understanding of what's the next plan. And then you got to adapt. I think that's probably more the fear for me is, are there enough good coaches that are still in this profession that are willing to adapt? Because that's what's going to have to happen. The game's not going back. And we can pound the table and we can point out all the things that are wrong with our game, but there are so many things that are great with our game. Look at last Saturday night. Was that not a great college football game? There was no flag planting. There was no, shots after the whistle. There was no pepper spray. That was a good Sun Belt football game that, was exciting, was suspenseful, that everybody left that game saying, wow, that was a good football game. So there's still some purity to this game. We're just going to have to adapt to what it's going to become in order for us to be able to keep moving it forward.
Thank you, Coach.
All right. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you guys. Look forward to seeing you guys Saturday.